Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 13th of February. Well, was there any surprise when the economists who were so brilliant were so shocked that inflation came in higher than they expected? I mean, I'm sitting here having my morning coffee, and you just got to wonder what school these guys went to for economics. It just doesn't make any sense to me. At the end of the day, Biden going out, all of his people just spent every penny they possibly could. It was almost $1 trillion in those last months. And hello, what was the effect of that? Exactly what we're seeing from the inflation numbers. And this was what we had talked about, that Trump was going to face this going into it, that there would be this massive spike in it. Now, of course, you see what they're pointing out in the fraud. Nobody expected that because forever. They've always spent this money and it's never been talked about or mentioned. And now you're getting a full exam of the level of fraud and deceit that takes place within the federal government. And yeah, it's not pretty. And it's still problematic because there's no other solution inside of it. But this is why we see a lot of the asset prices that where they're at, they're not going to change. And this becomes a real issue of economics in a broader sense. When we're looking at the ES here, we expected to, hold support, especially with the magenta rise, over yellow in this particular case. We had the rising shorts, but that wasn't going to be enough to drive things. We're caught in this orange between cyan and red on the DOC down here, and that usually is just continuation. Well, what have we been doing going sideways? And it's pretty much the same. The volatility is still great. Don't get me wrong there. That is excellent. But from a broader perspective, the way the Fed has treated, the economy over these last years, decades actually, at least a decade, um, we've been getting nothing but an attempt at stabilization. Well, with that, you don't get any price corrections. So the numbers that you see, things aren't going to go down in price because there's never been an opportunity to have a deflationary effect. So where you see levels in that, even if things don't increase, they're not going to get any cheaper. So keep that one in mind. And this is something I talked about as far as real estate and things like that, and the commercial element, how, in the coming years that could actually be of a benefit, particularly as these businesses from around the world are going to be forced to have companies inside America to counter the trade policies. Now, Trump just instituted reciprocal tariffs. All that's meaning is that, even for here in the EU, when you have to pay 22% VAT and the other fees on top of any import, they're just going to do the same thing. So that's a balancing act. The Europeans aren't going to like it because basically we've been underrating their economy, much like we would say that the U.S. economy is being underwritten by oil prices and commodities being traded in dollars. Same concept. We've just been redirecting it, paying those fees. So that's going to be an interesting change. You can see that rates jumping up in the Fed, pretty much handcuffed at this particular stage. They can't do anything because they just don't know what's going to happen. That's the long and the short of it. They're just clueless. Um, and they're sort of stuck in a situation because you do have higher inflation. There's no question about that. Now, is that going to start to diminish quickly? Yeah, but that really depends too on what the spending levels in the budget, because some of that's out of Trump's control as to how much they're going to spend, debt ceiling, those kind of things. But you can see from a Treasury standpoint, not looking good. You're going to see a continued push higher, and that's kind of a negative. The real question here, as we've been talking about, it all stems right here, oil. Are you going to be able to see enough supply of that to drive prices down, and how quickly will it happen? At this particular stage, um, yeah, not so much. As long as you're above the 65 range, actually, I think more closer to 60, you're still in an inflationary environment. So just get used to it. So as long as you see those numbers, just expect it. This is a bonus for the euro in their sense because they think that it's going to continue to see a devaluation of the dollar from higher pricing and built-in inflation to what they think is inflationary for tariffs. I don't see it that way. But, hey, I was the one who called for higher inflation coming out for this coming period, and the economists said just the opposite. So you could take that for what it is. They've been wrong, yeah, almost all the time. No shock here with gold, and this is the thing. People with money who can actually understand how economies work knew that the inflation numbers were going to be staggering coming through because of the amount of money that they threw at everything. Now, would there be clawbacks on some of this money? Nah, I wouldn't count on too much of that. You may be able to stop future fraud and abuse, but what's been done, it's going to be pretty hard to get any value out of that. It's not going to change. Yeah, still not seeing anything from Bitcoin in that, and that's just because the push of inflation is less than it has been now. We still don't have a budget now. That could change things, and that may drive up your cryptos in a significant way. ETH, same thing, still dead. Here it was from the 50K standpoint. Yeah, you can see we had popped up to the 100% and then did exactly what the MBI white spike right here called for, which is a move to what? Zero. Yep. And didn't quite get to the zero. We came close to it right in through here when it was going. And so that's always an interesting one because when you get back above the 23%, and it fought it quite a bit, but Magenta finally overtook it, and that was enough to keep things under control. We can see another MBI white spike took place right here, and that would call for a move down towards the 50. That's not all that terrible. You can see there was an early spike coming up, but that's kind of faded off in the European session at this particular stage. We look at it from a 5-minute chart here today. You can see what that looked like as everyone realized it. And then it was just buy that because you had all your call buyers that were in it ahead of time, wipe them out, then put buyers jump in, and then you flip them over as well. And your option dealers are happy with that situation completely. And you can see here where we're at in the regular market. So just understand this from the broader economic viewpoint. It's going to be very erratic as far as how things go in this first half of the year, probably all the way into the end of the year, unless you can get oil prices down significantly from where they're at. You're not going to see a whole lot of dramatic change. Is it a better direction? Yeah, well, anytime you can reduce federal spending and the size of government, it's going to be an improvement. But the problem is you've still got to correct for all that was done in the last 4 years. You're not going to be able to do that overnight. So just keep that one in mind. As always, anything relevant, I'll put on the Skype chat for you. Have a good one. Trade well.